says, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect, then there must be something implied in the commandment. So the Bible doesn't command us more than what we're able. So if the Bible says, love God with all your heart, love God with all your soul, love God with all your mind, love God with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, then that's all of your faculties. That's all that you can give. So with all that you have of your mind, all that you have of your heart, all that you have of your strength, that's what God calls us to love with. Is a human being able to love? Right. That's my question. Now, the Bible says, Jesus said this, all the law hangs on these two commandments. Love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Every other commandment hangs on just these two. Now, if humans have the capacity to love, then they have the capacity to keep the commandments of God. Because to walk in love is to fulfill the commandments. That's why in Romans chapter 13, the Bible says, he that loves another fulfills the law. So if we have the power to love and deny ourselves of our desires, and deny ourselves of our selfish passions, then we have the capacity to love as God would have us to.
Now, this is not to say that I think the individual should become as Christ-like as possible, but I just don't think that it is possible for a human to be sinless. I think every human sins, and we have to attempt. We can try to be as much like Christ as possible,
right,
but we cannot. We can never become as perfect.
Now, this is the thing. I have a confession to make. You know, I have sinned in my life. That's to my shame. I'm not bragging.
As everybody else.
But that's not an excuse. You see, what I'm saying is the occasion of our sin our nature or something else? The Bible says that out of the heart comes adulteries, fornications, blasphemies. Out of the heart comes these actions. Out of the heart comes what defiles a man, not out of your physical nature. Our physical nature is amoral. For example, if your nature was sinful, then if I were to cut off my hand, would I become less sinful? Could you see sin under a microscope? The church has made a great mistake today in making your flesh sinful. Your flesh cannot be sinful, for flesh is not a choice. Just like your eye color is not a choice, or your hair is not a choice, or the color of your skin. You cannot be blamed for your hair color, your eye color, or your skin color. And so to say that one is blamed for his nature, for why God damns him, I would understand why you would say God is unjust. I agree with you. But that's not the God of the Bible. Now, this is the occasion for our temptations. Is it our nature that tempts us? Is it the way we're made in the womb? The Bible says in James chapter 1, verse 13, he says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted because of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither does God ever tempt any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it brings forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren." Now, our nature has desires. I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I desire a sexual relationship, I have sexual desires. My nature desires these normal things. But my nature's desires are not in and of themselves sinful. To get angry is not in and of itself sinful.
All right, so we got a question.
But not yet. We're having a good discussion. I'll answer your question in just a second. The occasion of our temptation is out of our natural desires, which flow out of our nature. But our nature is not in and of itself sinful. Those natural desires can be gratified in unnatural ways.
Just the way I see it, though, your body is not your body is the Lord's. And your body is nothing more than a tool.
Right.
For your soul.
Absolutely.
So,
What did you say? A tool for our sin?
Our soul.
Our souls. Now, our body is intertwined with our soul, so that what you do with your soul affects your body, or what you do with your body affects your soul. That's why God warns about sexual sin. Not because he's trying to ruin our fun. God made sex. It's wonderful. It's good. Glory to God. But the thing is, our soul can affect the status of our heart based off how we use our body. So God just wants us to be wise in our conduct and in our actions with our body. But this is what you said earlier, the body is a tool. And so the body is an instrument. Now, I can take a tool and I can do evil with it, or I can do good with it. Now, if I'm born with freedom of will by a body God gave me in the womb, then I have power over my will, even from a child, to do the right and reject the wrong. So I can't blame God or my nature for becoming a sinner, even if from the young age of our existence we chose a principle of selfishness. But I know people who have in the Old Testament and in the New Testament whom the Bible says walked in all the commandments of the Lord blameless. And so if that's possible, then it must be possible for me too, and for you. So what I see now is, it is my desires that I don't control that are to be blamed for my sin. I let my desires rule my life rather than me control my desires. And then I end up living a life of passion rather than a life of love, reason, or truth. And so I become flipped upside down. I think with the wrong motive. Myself, my desires, fulfillment of me, rather than what it may be to God, myself, or my neighbor. And so salvation is not getting a new nature. Salvation is not getting a new body. I didn't get a better smile when I got saved. My nature didn't change, but what changed was my heart. It's a regeneration of moral character. Salvation from sin. Salvation from the principle of self, whereby self is dethroned and love and righteousness is enthroned on our heart. So it's not my nature that I can blame, but it is my desires that I do not control. Lust is the Greek word concupiscence, forbidden desire. And so if I allow desires to rule my life, I will become in sin. And that's why from a youth we're to teach children, because even as you mentioned from a baby, there's a principle of self-motivation. And we're to teach them from a young way that they may learn not to follow after self, but choose to be selfless. And so it's only natural to fulfill your natural desires because it's what you're governed by from a child. You don't have moral reasoning to be governed by moral light from right and wrong, but you're governed by the natural desires of the body. What'd you say?
You don't think the nature of the world is sinful?
Are you talking about humanity or this earth?
This material.
I don't believe it's sinful. I believe it's made by God. Now it is cursed and become fallen because of sin.
Whenever it was the Garden of Eden, the serpent took what's it called, responsibility for the apple, right?
Right.
And with that,
I'm listening to you.
he got control of With that, he got control of the world. So that is where. That's where I'm kind of getting my logic from. Because Adam and Eve did not take responsibility for that. The serpent took responsibility. And since he took responsibility of that, he became in control of the earth.
Yeah. The thing is, Adam, now think of it this way. Does our nature necessitate our choices? Well, if you have a sinful nature, would it make you sin? Okay. Well, the reason I ask you that is because how did the angels sin? Because they didn't have a sinful nature. How did Adam and Eve sin if they were made perfect without a sinful nature? So you have an ability to sin. Your nature does not necessitate your choices. So you can't blame your nature for sin. I can't blame our human nature because God made my nature in the womb. Because the Bible says right there, God does not tempt man with evil, nor does he tempt any man. I can't say I'm tempted of God, but if He made my nature sinful, I'm tempted because of God. My nature's the issue.
But the devil does.
Yeah, he tempts us, yes. And so the thing is, he appeals to your desires of nature that you would gratify them in a selfish way. Those desires can be righteous or unrighteous. Desiring a woman sexually is normal, but gratifying it in a selfish way becomes sin.
But is it not sinful to lust? That is lusting.
Well, the thing is, when lust is given birth, it brings forth sin. So you can have desire that isn't sinful, but how is that desire ruling your life? How are you responding to that desire? Are you controlling it or is it controlling you? That's the difference.
I just definitely have to read more.
Right, that's why it says out of the heart comes adulteries and fornications. Heart and will are synonymous, the same Greek word in the New Testament. So it's your will that's the problem, not your nature, which goes and coincides with my position that it's what you choose that is the problem, not what is coming against you, since you have authority over your desire. Does that make sense?
I'll read into it. Yeah, I like talking about this.
Sure, yeah. What's your name? Can I give you a pamphlet? Here. I give you 2. We're just normal Christians. We're not Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons. This is a bunch of Bible.
Yeah, people are saying you're probably Jehovah's Witnesses or something.
No, we preach outside of Jehovah's Witness churches.
Yeah.
So
What church you guys go to?
Huh?
What church are you guys affiliated
I go
with?
to just the Holiness church. I preach in Methodist churches, Nazarene, Baptist. I just go everywhere. I'm like an evangelist, so I don't actually.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay.
Good to talk to you, Ethan. God bless you.
Can you read me Matthew 7:1? Matthew 7:1. Thank you.
Okay. Matthew 7, verse 1. I got it highlighted in yellow. Judge not that you be not judged.
Thank you.
Now, the issue we have is that that's not an island, a verse by itself. It is surrounded by other verses. So, scriptural critique and scriptural criticism, when it comes to reading the Bible, you are to take context to give you meaning of one verse. I cannot take one verse on its own. I must get the context. So, Matthew chapter 7, verse 2. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged, and with what measure you mete, it shall be measured to you again. And why do you behold the mote that is in your brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in your own eye? How will you say to your brother, let me pull the mote out of your eye when a beam is in your own? Thou hypocrite, first cast the beam out of your own eye, and then you shall see clearly to cast the mote out of your brother's eye.
So, there it says not to judge. You're calling people freaks. Right there, if you read it, it says freak. So you're calling people freaks, and you expect us to bash them like not to Matthew. That's why you're the second area. We all proud of you.
That's a calculated and intentional word. I want to pierce